Ready to go? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for all coming tonight, both here in Wedgeport. All voices matter. We want to respect the opinions of all participants, which means we will restrict presentation times. I will ask personnel in the Wedgeport to manage presentation times over there, and we will manage presentation times here in Tuscan. We ask the public to express their concerns around the project or around the nuisances that project may produce. Before the presentation to the public, our planner has prepared the process for a development agreement and the items that should be included in the draft document. The developer, Jonathan Turner from Elemental Energy, shall be available for any technical questions or comments that come from the public. The next step after this meeting is a Planning Advisory Committee meeting, which is scheduled for December the 12th, 2023. That is where the committee shall discuss the draft agreement along with the comments from this session. If the committee agrees, they shall recommend to council that they bring a draft development agreement to a public hearing to be scheduled in the new year, which will allow the public a second opportunity to speak on this matter. Thank you for all your interest and respectful treatment of those involved in the process. We will now move on to the presentation from our planner, Will Robinson Mushkat from WSP.
Thank you very much. My name is Will Robinson Mushkat, and as mentioned, I'm a planner from WSP. If you'll all bear with me for just a second, I'm going to share my screen. I just want to confirm that everyone can see the title screen on the screen. It says public participation meeting.
No, we can't see it.
No. Okay. 1 second, please. Let's see if I can fix that. Can you see that now?
Yeah, we can, Will. Thanks.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you guys very much. So as mentioned, this is a public participation meeting concerning a development agreement application to permit a wind farm in the communities of Wedgeport, Little River Harbor, and Comoes Hill. The purpose of the public participation meeting is as follows. It is to inform residents of the communities of the application at hand. It is to discuss the planning policies that allow council to consider this application. It is to provide an opportunity for members of the communities to comment and ask questions. It is to collect feedback from the public on the application to help inform the development agreement. And just a friendly reminder to be courteous and civil in our discussion of the application tonight. So what is a development agreement exactly? A development agreement is a contract between the municipality and the applicant or proponent in this case. It restricts the applicant to the use or uses permitted via the development agreement. It allows council to exercise more specific and stringent controls over not only the use or uses permitted by the agreement, but the maintenance, form, and character of the development. And finally, it runs with the land. The conditions do not cease if the land or should change ownership. So the site context within the municipality. So on the screen there, you can see the municipality of the District of Argyle. And the red star on the left-hand side is the general location of the wind farm. It's quite a large area and land assembly that would be covered by this development agreement. Getting a little closer, this is the site context within the communities, Upper Wedgeport, Little River Harbor, and Comoes Hill. And moving on, this is the subject land assembly context as well. So you can see, I don't know if my cursor is available or just 1 second here. You can see here, this is the area, the general location where the subject land assembly and the properties that would be would be covered by the development agreement would be located. So as mentioned, that subject land assembly is in the communities of one second here, just turning off the laser pointer. It's within the communities of Wedgeport, Little River Harbor, and Camoes Hill. And subject land assembly is approximately 1,500 acres in total area. So again, it's a particularly large land assembly consisting of multiple properties. Within the surrounding area are primarily low-density residential land uses, along with some marine and industrial uses. And then probably the most prevalent use is large tracts of vacant and undeveloped forested land. So with regard to the application details, in August of 2022, the proponent of the project, Wedgeport Windfarm LP, was awarded a power purchase agreement with Nova Scotia Power Incorporated, NSPI, to supply 80 megawatts of clean, renewable energy. And an environmental assessment was submitted to Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change and was approved in May of 2023. Wedgeport Windfarm the proponent has applied in September of 2023 to enter into a development agreement with the municipality of the District of Argyle. And a development agreement is required for a wind farm land use under the policies and regulations of the municipality's municipal planning strategy, the MPS, and the land use bylaw, the LUB. So just to provide a little bit more context, a power purchase agreement was part of the rate-based procurement for 350 megawatts of wind energy to assist Nova Scotia in meeting its renewable energy targets of 80% renewable energy by 2030, 53% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and ultimately net zero by 2050. The application details are as follows. If approved by council, the development agreement would permit the development of a wind farm consisting of 12 large-scale wind turbine generators and turbine pads. Each wind turbine would generate approximately 7 to 8 megawatts of clean renewable energy for a total of 91 megawatts of energy. And in addition to the turbines, the development agreements would permit access roads for employees to access the turbines for maintenance and operation, 34.5 kV electricity collector lines, which would be installed to connect the wind turbines to the substation. A substation for power, which is used to step up the electricity from 34.5 to 138 kV. Which is the transmission lines, and then the voltage required to carry power in those transmission lines, and then approximately 20 kilometers of transmission line that would be owned by Nova Scotia Power Incorporated, connecting the substation that would be developed for this specific project to the NSPI grid at the Tuscott substation located in the neighboring municipality of the District of Yarmouth. So this is a site plan that has been submitted by the proponent indicating the location of the 12 wind turbines on the subject property. So you'll note that there are 2 access roads on the subject property, and I'm just going to again try and turn on my my highlighter here for a second. So the 12 wind turbines are located here, 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 here is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 2 access roads, one short one that extends to the single wind turbine here, and then a much longer access road that continuously runs to the 11 other remaining turbines on the property, or the land assembly, excuse me, one here, and then down this way, extending from Wedgeport through Little River Harbor down to Camoes Hill. And the substation would be located right here. The purple line that you see here is the new 34.5 transmission line that would collect the electricity from each of the wind turbines, and that also would run parallel on this particularly longer access road down to here, and take that electricity that's being proposed to be generated through the wind turbines back to the substation right here. All right. Now, with regard to the wind turbines themselves, the proponent has supplied a couple photos of previous projects they've worked on. So this gives, an example of kind of the scope and scale of the wind turbines themselves. And you'll note on the bottom right-hand corner is a comparative diagram to the proposed wind turbines, which are about 200 meters tall, to some of the existing ones within the community itself. So they are, while the wind turbines themselves would be taller than what has been seen in the municipality previously, the trade-off would be that because they're taller, they're able to generate more electricity, and therefore fewer wind turbines are needed in order to generate the amount of electricity proposed through this particular project. With regard to the project life cycle, the turbine location and geotechnical analysis is ongoing. Vegetation clearing for the proposed wind turbines is proposed for the winter and the spring of the coming year. Road construction and site preparation, so the access road development is proposed to occur this coming year, from the spring to the autumn. The following year, spring to autumn 2025, construction of the actual turbines themselves. Fall of winter 2025, the energizing and commissioning of the wind turbines, and then the operation itself is scheduled to operate for 35 years, from 2025 to 2060 approximately, and then a decommissioning period once the life cycle of this energy project is completed. So with regard to the policy considerations, so these are the policies that are found within the municipality's planning documents. There is a proposed wind turbine, proposed wind farm, turbines and associated infrastructure is permitted to be considered within the coastal community CC designation and zone, which is where all the properties are located. Lands within this specific designation and zone, the coastal community zone, are intended to accommodate a wide range of residential, institutional, commercial, industrial, agricultural, recreation, and utility uses, and this proposed development is considered a utility use. Existing policies within the municipal planning strategy enable council to consider large-scale wind turbine generators and wind farms, but only via development agreements. MPS policies and land use bylaw regulations encourage the growth and development of alternative energy sources and establish policy framework and bylaw provisions to enable the development of large-scale wind farms of varying size. So with regard to the specific policy considerations and evaluative criteria for large-scale wind turbine generators and wind farms that are found within the municipality's planning documents. Any large-scale wind turbine generator must be separated from dwellings, existing dwellings, excluding seasonal dwellings and camps, by a minimum distance of 1 kilometer. Mitigation measures of noise, visual impacts, shadow effects, and environmental impacts has to be undertaken in order to minimize negative effects. So with regard to those, a lot of these impacts are regulated through the environmental assessment. So in terms of noise, there's a limit of 40 decibels. 60 decibels is the kind of the average conversation. In terms of visual impacts and shadow impacts, shadow flicker can't occur more than 30 minutes a day generated from these. And in terms of environmental impacts, prior to operations, the EA the EAA requires that data has to be submitted with regard to protection around and identification of flora and fauna, and must monitor for birds and bats, and submit adaptation management plans. The DA itself will address safety concerns both on and off site for matters of electrical safety, ice throw, blade flow, and in the unlikely event of turbine collapse and emergency responses. So these are items that would be worked into the development agreement to ensure that that the appropriate distances are maintained and that the appropriate security of the sites is established to mitigate the safety concerns around this or frankly any other utility use for electricity. With regard to policy considerations, all documentation required at both the federal and provincial levels of government has to be provided by the proponent. A decommissioning plan, so how the site will be kind of returned and remediated to its state, is included as part of the development agreement for when the life cycle of this operation is over. And the proposed development must be in accordance with the implementation policies for all development agreements found within the MPS. And with regard to those specific policies in the MPS considering the implementations of development agreements, and so these are the terms that all development agreements within the municipality are evaluated against. Financial impact on the municipality. It's not perceived that this will have a negative impact on the municipality in terms of finances. Adequacy of services. This is an unserviced site that doesn't require water or wastewater. Creation or worsening of a pollution problem, for example, soil erosion. It's not anticipated that this would cause or worsening of a pollution problem. The adequacy of storm drainage and effects to alteration of drainage. The requirements of the development agreement and environmental assessment require that a wind turbine would be situated at least 100 meters from any type of identified water course or water body or wetland as identified by Nova Scotia Environment. The site is suitable in terms of its physical characteristics and topography for this particular type of use. Adequacy and proximity of schools, recreations, and other community facilities. It's not applicable in this instance as this is not a residential development. Adequacy of road networks, and the road network is adequate for this use. And again, an access road will be developed as part of this project for ongoing maintenance and operation of the site. There would be sufficient off-street parking provided for the times that vehicles are needed to proceed on the site and access the proposed turbines. Appropriate hours of operation, so hours of operation for the site, including the construction and the maintenance and ongoing operation, are included in the development agreement. Architectural features is not applicable in this particular application, and that the proposal will not alter the character or stability of the neighborhood. Again, the wind farm, based on the regulations within the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, require that the turbines are situated a minimum of 1 kilometer from any existing dwelling, and they're separated again by forest and vacant land. They're not intended to be altering the character of the neighborhood other than potentially seeing them off in kind of the distance there. So with regard to the financial benefits to the municipality from this particular project, so Nova Scotia has a provincial act called the Wind Turbine Facilities Municipal Taxation Act of Nova Scotia, which regulates how these utilities, in this case wind farms, are taxed by the municipalities and how the municipalities collect taxes. And so basically the owner of the wind farm is liable for the taxes under the Act, regardless of whether they own the land the turbines are situated on or that land is leased. And a wind farm is liable to municipal taxes at an amount equal to the total capacity in megawatts multiplied by the wind turbine facility tax rate. So at the start of the operations period, which is projected to be winter of 2025, that tax rate is estimated to be at $8,575 per megawatt. And the rate itself is subject to an annual escalation of 1%. So every year that rate rises by 1%. So assuming a total capacity of 80 megawatts, the first year of operation, 2025, is anticipated to generate approximately $686,000 in tax revenue for the municipality. The following year, again, using that escalator of 1%, it would be estimated to generate approximately $692,860. Following year, 2027, $699,788. 2028, $700,006, $786, and so on for the operational life cycle of the project. The one note I will note is that these are estimates only, and the amount of revenue is contingent on the amount of energy that's annually generated by the project itself. There is also a communities benefit fund, which is part of the proponent's application and does get written into the development agreement itself. Communities benefit fund is basically to support local initiatives, and the proponent has committed to the establishment of a fund that communities benefit fund, which will contribute $80,000 per year. Funds are intended to be distributed to the communities in which the wind farms are located. The idea is that a subcommittee of council will be formed comprised of local residents of these communities to allocate the funds on an annual basis. And the proponent is also committed to the reliance on local supply chains and local partners. This is twofold. It's often most cost effective and efficient to utilize localized services, and it certainly builds and strengthens relations within the communities where the projects are located. So with regard to the public engagement of this particular process and really any development agreement application process within the municipality, staff will comply with the public participation policies within the municipal planning strategy. Signage was placed on the subject land assembly in key and highly visible points on or around November 17th, notifying residents that an application has been received. The PPM, which we're at tonight, is being held to provide an opportunity for residents to pose questions and provide comment, and the application will then proceed to the Planning Advisory Committee for review and recommendation. As per Section 206 of the Municipal Government Act, a public hearing is required for amendments and development agreements to hear input from the community. An advertisement outlining the application and notifying the public of the public hearing will be placed into the Vanguard and published on the website of the municipality. And the public is encouraged to request additional information and clarification leading up to the public hearing, should you have any further questions or comments on the proposed development agreement. With regard to the next steps in the process, staff will continue to review the proposal as public feedback is received. Council will schedule a public hearing upon recommendation from the Planning Advisory Committee. With regard to the public hearing, mail-out notices will be sent to property owners within 152 meters of the subject property or subject land assembly in this instance. Again, the notice of the public hearing is advertised in the Vanguard 2 weeks prior to the public hearing, and that notice is also published on the municipality's website. So if you look at the flow chart kind of on the bottom of the screen, the application has been made, public notification has occurred. We are at the staff evaluation PPM meeting portion, so that third purple rectangle on the screen, kind of running from left to right. Following tonight's meeting would be the PAC meeting and recommendation, which would then go to first reading at council, followed by the public hearing, which is again another opportunity for the public to comment on the development agreement application. Second reading by council, and then a 14-day appeal period of council's decision to the NSUARB. And with that, I will open the floor, I guess, or turn the speaking back to the chair of the meeting for questions and comments. As mentioned, I do believe that the representative from the applicant is here this evening, and so I'd like to thank everyone for their attention and patience during my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. So now we'll go to the question and answer, and we have registered questions that we have already. So I'll turn that to the CAO Muse, Alain Muse, and Scott Surratt.
Thank you, Chair. We received a number of questions from the Little River Harbor Windmill Committee, and we also received one question from a resident. We'll go through these questions and answer them best we can here. So the first question, I will read the question, and because it's a fairly technical question, I'd probably pass it over maybe to Jonathan to help us with the answer. The first question was, as of November 1st, Frank McDonald, who is a member of Elementals, still did not have an answer to a question from Bill Murphy asked during the month of July 2023. The question presented as follows: who is responsible if a blade falls off a turbine and hits a person? Is it the landowner's responsibility or the project's responsibility? And maybe we could pass it on to John if he wants to tackle that.
Sure. Might as well come up right there.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Can everyone hear me, see me? I gotta move over a little bit. There we go.
Yeah, we can hear you, John. Thanks.
Right. Excellent. So first of all, I want to apologize on behalf of Trent. We were unaware that we had not answered this question. So I just want to apologize for that. But I think kind of generally, there's a couple of things that I want to kind of speak to with respect to this question. So, I think that, first of all, we take full responsibility for the safe operations and maintenance of our projects. And so, and by doing this, I think how we look at this is there's a risk management aspect of which we use signage to ensure that people are aware of the different risks in the area. We also undertake regular sort of maintenance of our operating assets. So I think that we do acknowledge that things like blades falling off turbines are within the realm of possibilities, but it's not a common occurrence. I think that one of the sort of more common sort of like occurrences or risks around sort of operating turbines that are in the same realm of a risk of the question would be ice throw. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that as we think about this there's two kind of approaches. So I talked about the risk management piece. There's a piece that we do around how we lay our projects out. So we have distances. So as part of the municipality's like responsibilities or rules that we have to follow is that we're not able to have turbines within 1,000 meters of where people live. So that's quite a sort of setback from where people, both live and their immediate property where they spend time outside for longer periods of time. So we have good sort of setback from where both where people live and where public have access to. The lands that the project are sited on are on private land. We have agreements in place with the landowners, and it is our intent to have a locked gate access as we access the road or access the project location. Again, different landowners will have different requirements, but this isn't, having a road isn't about facilitating access to these properties by these sort of public. So we will have signage at the entrance to our project that both remind the private landowners of the risks of accessing properties, and also if public gain access or walk around the gate of what they could expect to encounter. So I think that's kind of like generally the sort of how we would answer that question. So there's both design things and there's sort of signage and sort of awareness sort of pieces that we included.
Perfect.
And I think Alice is in the audience tonight. So does that answer your question, Alice?
Yes and no. The thing is, we still did not answer. We'll just say somebody did go on and got hurt somehow. Who is liable? You fellas or the landlord?
So we have land agreements, we have like agreements in place with all of the landowners. It clearly states what kind of responsibilities each party has. The details of our land agreements are confidential with each of the landowners, and we encourage landowners when they enter into agreements with us to seek legal counsel, like around the execution of those agreements. Like what I can say is that we take responsibility for the maintenance, for the construction, the safe maintenance of all of our equipment, because our staff are also at risk, and so that's our responsibility. And we ensure that there's signage and like awareness raised around the risks that sort of people they have to acknowledge before they enter the property. So at access points, reasonable access points, there will be signage posted.
So in one way, if I get this right, say I had a piece of land.
Yeah.
And my neighbor went there and I know they crossed over. It'd be my responsibility to make sure they don't.
So I can't speak to the specifics of the agreement, and I can't speak to the interpretation of any of the legal terms of our agreement. So I think that we have to just kind of generally kind of rely on common land rights. Is that as we own property, we do have responsibilities around those sort of properties, and if you are acknowledging or allowing people to enter your sort of property, it's also your responsibility to warn them of the potential risks that they could encounter.
Switch. We'll switch.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Do you want me to do the last question just before Jeff here?
Sure.
That question number 7?
Yes.
Scott, do you want to ask just because there's one more question for me?
Sure. We can, I can read the question, and then if you want to answer it, that's great. Question number 6, again, this is coming from the Little River Harbor Windmill Committee. The map that was shown at the session held at the community hall differs from the map in the notice sent out most recently. The last map showed the windmill would stop at the Little River Wharf Road. If that is not the case, how much further down from the Little River Wharf Road are they going?
Yeah, so I think Ellen can also answer this question when he comes forward, but I think we had a discussion here before the meeting started with Alice around that sort of question. So I think the difference in the maps that are being shown is that the map that was in the advertisement and then the municipality has posted shows the entirety of all of the PIDs that we are using for part of our project, versus the project maps that we show as part of our environmental assessment, part of our public meetings, show the locations of the turbines and the locations of the infrastructure, and will also identify our study area, which is a portion of those private land sort of parcels. So I can confirm that there have been some changes from the project layout that we showed in our October 17th open house meeting and what was in our environmental assessment. Our project is now a 12 turbine project. Previously, we had it was 13 turbines. So we've actually we've moved one turbine and we've removed a second turbine. So just for sort of reference, the turbines that were up along the Tuscot Wilderness Area boundary are now not part of the project. The other change is that we no longer have road access into our project from Little River. So sorry, from Como's Hill Road, which is opposite the access point to the Little River Harbor Wharf. So those are the changes, and the changes we made are reflected in the figure that was shown tonight in the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation.
I'm going to switch. So before I get into the question, I on that question 6, I'll say that all of you have gassed up at some point, and every single one of you, when you went to gas up, and you said if the number on the gas the fuel tank is different than the one they say inside. One of them's right and one of them's wrong, right? In this instance, our advertisement was far too broad. So what it did was it included more than what the project actually is. And I hope that you're able to see the actual design and be satisfied that that is the case. If there is an error, that is the correct one, and ours is simply an illustration. So that's what happened there. I also want to thank those of you who authored the questions in advance. I know that later on some of you may want to speak, and we're going to give that opportunity for you, and many of you may just want to listen, and that's okay too. It's really up to you. This won't be the only time that you'll have an opportunity to speak on this or listen on this, and we'll get into the details of that. I want to thank Alice because I know that some of this was authored by her, and I want to say thank you very much because it gives us the time to respond appropriately instead of us fumbling around for an answer on the day. So it really is helpful to us, and we hope we can answer it as, whether you like the answer or not, we're going to do our best to answer it as completely as we can. So the second question is, during the meeting in which the members of council and staff and certain staff attended at Harbour Hill Community Hall, a lengthy discussion was had concerning community awareness. A conversation about a notice posted in Wedgeport was not acceptable for our community of Little River Harbour. And the point being that Wedgeport was not the only location affected. Also mentioned was the municipality's Facebook page, and the people spoke up and said that many in the area are of an age group that does not frequent or even use social media. A resolution to this matter were mailings in which those who come to represent your office agreed. Another suggestion that was made at that meeting was posters being up in the area. Some areas to be considered would be Camoes Hill Community Hall, Melbourne Hall, Wharf and Little River Harbour, etc. So clearly more areas were discussed. The white signs the municipality used to be posted at the site would be helpful as well. A few members of the community did receive an email, but noticed others in the days leading up to it had no knowledge of the meeting to be held on December 7th. The question is, who was to notify the public? Certainly not the responsibility of the few who were fortunate enough to have an email as suggested by a municipal representative. What would this have looked like? People making phone calls or even knocking on doors. So essentially, I think you get it. That's the question. I'm gonna do my best to answer. So first of all, I think there was a question, who's responsible for the informing the community members of a municipal meeting? That responsibility is squarely the responsibility of the municipality. It is not the responsibility of residents or any other members. At times, from a practical perspective, municipal administrators may lean on elected officials or even community members to assist them in distributing information. We regret any concern on the part of the Windmill Committee around inappropriate or insufficient communication. We regret that entirely. That's certainly not our intention. Our intention is the opposite. The municipality made efforts to contact key individuals of the Little River Harbour Windmill Authority because they were a group that was very interested in the project, and they had indicated their interest in multiple occasions. We've had multiple public meetings on this particular project. So we saw them as very connected, engaged individuals. So some of them were touched, were emailed directly to say, hey, look, we won't want to miss you. We want to make sure that you know. We consider that that notice that is considered too late is unacceptable, and notice too soon is often missed. So we look to aim to balance that. So if we tell you a month in advance, you might forget. If we tell you 2 days in advance, it's not fair. So the concerned residents that pen these questions are the same ones that carved the future of this community through volunteer work, and we want to recognize that. These are hardworking individuals. Social media is still our principal way to connect to our residents, and we do appreciate that we can't connect everyone using that form of advertising. Many still do use that. On our data actually indicates that the senior age group is our biggest user and it's the biggest user by far. And that's not to say that other seniors don't have access to this, which is why we extended our advertising to CIFA and Y95 radio. And I trust that some of you would have heard that as well. And while social media isn't always the best answer for everyone, it does increase the word of mouth. in the community, and that's helpful in a small community. So I've explained what we've done, and some of the things that were discussed at that meeting were not included in that. So I want to acknowledge that that's the case. So I do want to talk about a little bit about the difference, at least from a staff perspective, between the public participation and public hearing. So first of all, your public participation is your initial contact. It's basically saying, hey, look, we got ourselves an agreement request and we're going to go through it. These are the things that it includes. Are there things we missed? Are there things we should be talking about? So the conversation around this has just begun. It is not the end. And so we want to make sure that the community here understands that. And we know we got to do better around communicating with the public. So we will, after the public participation, so we've done what we've done around this. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to the community between now and public hearing. So if everything goes the way that we expect, and things don't always go the way that people expect, the public hearing will happen in January of 2024, and there'll be a call for a public hearing, and then there will actually be the public hearing itself, which would happen in about mid-January. We are going to post posters in anywhere that the community wants us to post posters, and then when we think we have them all, we're going to add 3 more. So we promise you that. That's an assurance. The other thing that we'll do is we'll do the mail outs. Our public hearing doesn't just say we should, it forces us to put out mail outs to every individual or home or resident that is within the vicinity of the development. And I would say that vicinity is rather large because it spans a large distance. So I can assure you that, I shouldn't say assure, I can give you confidence that the Camoes Hill, Little River, Wedgeport, Upper, Middle, Lower, all of those residents will receive letters, and perhaps even outside in the Melbourne, Pygmies Point areas as well, and perhaps in the Plymouth areas as well. That always depends on Canada Post. So we will err on the side of more. Okay, but we can't assure you that, like, what Canada Post does with that's a different story. So we're just going to err on the side of more. So the other thing, we're going to open channels of communication between now and December 12th. We're committed to holding a community meeting here, informal, not council, just sit down and shoot the breeze on the project. Nothing official. This is not presentation or anything. We're going to come to you. We're going to talk about the project. You'll have every opportunity to tell us what your fears and concerns are, and also tell us where we got it wrong around advertising and communication. That we need that information from you to do it the way that you want. That makes sense. And we will do this. We will use technology for this. We will use online for people that, if people want to choose to come in and give us comments, and we'll find our place in this community. You know, when I say in this community, I mean Wedgeport, Little River, Camoes Hill, and combination of that. And we'll lean on you as community members to tell us what's best. I'm speaking a lot from the perspective of an administrator. I'm not an elected official. But the process of getting to where we are is very much an administrative process, but the decision rests with council. I just want to be very clear about that. So you might hear us talking a lot about it, but it's because we're going through the steps right now, okay? We will engage directly with the Windfarm committee as well to understand what would best be done. And we will directly engage seniors and other groups in the region. I know that the local, is it Melbourne or Little River? I can't recall. It is kind of uprising. The community hall is starting to reinvigorate itself, and so there's new volunteers, or there's more work being done in those community halls. We can go to those halls if they're having meetings. We can have those conversations if that's what is best for the community. So it's a long answer. I want to just say that you're right. There's certain elements of advertising that were not done at this juncture, but they will be done at multiple points before the juncture is completed.
Can I add just one thing?
Of course.
There's a part where you said that the group was notified. We did have an email, but nobody informed us that when you get emails from you others, it says you do not copy, you do not tell, you do not do nothing with this email. And at the end, it said, share with your group. Well, to me, this is a group of people. right? So we are a committee, so we shared it among ourselves and talked about it.
Sure.
It did not say, share with your community.
Right.
So we did not share it with the community about the meeting, because that thing told us to zip up.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
And so I know exactly what you're talking about.
That comes back to the municipality.
So the municipality emails, so many of you who would deal with emails a lot, the company that you work with often at the bottom of the email says, usually there's a little paragraph. And if you're not used to email, you may not read this properly. So the people that are more used to emails are more used to seeing what I'm about to say. And so what that email says usually is, the email is intended to be sent to Ted Sonia. If you are not Ted, delete it, because this is confidential.
Yes.
So if I read that with a different lens, not seeing that, so if I see that, I almost ignore it, because I know you meant to send it to me, so there's no issue. But if it's the first or second time I've read that, I'm gonna be careful, because I might say, oh my gosh, like, you meant for me to keep this private. Actually, what was meant was, we meant for the email to not be distributed to the wrong person. So what happened, of course, is you read it to be that it was confidential and you never shared it. And guess what? It isn't your responsibility to share that information. You are absolutely correct. It's not your responsibility. The responsibility lands on us. But I think there's a miscommunication that happened there. And I regret that. And I don't think there was any intention on our part to do anything other than blast it through the sky.
Even if it said community, but
Yeah.
it did not say community,
Right.
It said group.
And I think if that happens again, I would strongly encourage, because we've had a relationship and we have communication, that you could easily just clarify that with an email or a call. We would be happy to clarify that for you. That's an unfortunate misunderstanding that happened in your case. And I know it was well intentioned, because I know who sent it and I know what his intentions were. His intentions were to make sure that at least the committee members, or those that have been most vocal on this, were aware that this was coming. Take no chances, right?
We told nobody in the community. We kept it secret.
And look, I understand why. I can respect why. It makes a lot of sense. So, like I said, it's not over. It's certainly far from over. We're gonna continue our efforts, and we're gonna make sure that conversation continues. I will say this on behalf of the developer: the application is very, very complicated. So to go through it, it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. We have the fire chief here, so and so we understand that. So we know that some of this stuff may take a little bit of time. So all I can say is we're committed to that time, what it takes. So if we need to go through things, and a resident says, well, I really need to understand what do you mean by ice throw, which if people don't know what that is, it is what you imagine it is, right? Frozen water flying off of a blade that's moving. You know, how far does it go? Yeah. Should I be worried? Right? Or shadow flicker, which is basically when it goes like this and the sun is shining at a certain location, it will make like a flicker, and that might be offensive or annoying to you. So what does that mean? So we can get in those details. That's not for today, but we can get in those details between now and the public hearing, I assure you. And look, I don't want you to feel like you did anything wrong. You did everything right, and we appreciate the fact that you were just reading it the way that you were reading it. And it's unfortunate. It was
all comes from the group. It's not just.
Yeah, I'm picking on you, Alice, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I guess just for the group. So I think that actually answers another question that you raised here. So I won't go in there in that question. The third question is the meeting being streamed on your social media channels. Who are you really trying to connect with? Many of the people in the community in Little River Harbor are not using this technology. This is an aging community, and these citizens are being disregarded. So first, the citizens aren't being disregarded because statistically we know that many people use this technology, though we know it's not perfect. We know it doesn't reach all these people. This is a bit repetitive. So we are streaming this public meeting. We stream all public meetings. We typically do not stream PAC meetings, which is this one, Planning and Advisory Commission. Usually the Planning and Advisory Commission is a planning meeting, and it's usually done off camera. But because of what we're talking about, we felt it was important to broaden the message. So people who can't leave their home, who are stuck at their, and hadn't heard anything, but suddenly they pull open their Facebook, boom, all of a sudden there's a live feed. Oh, what's this? So you might catch people like that. We do this on live stream. Our success rate on live stream is about is about 20 to 1. So when we live stream, there's about 20 people, and when we don't, there's about one person because they got to get off their chair or wherever and they have to come. So we stream. The other reason why we stream is actually because of our seniors and some that are less able-bodied, that they can't actually drive or leave their home. Yes, there could be technology limitations for those people, and I respect that. But if there isn't, they could watch this from the comforts of their home. And so that's why it's being streamed. And we feel like streaming is the most transparent way to have a meeting. And not everybody agrees, and that's okay. So that's how I would answer that. I don't know that I missed anything else there. All of our meetings are open to the public if they wish to choose and watch in person. So even the PAC meeting here, if it wasn't streamed, you would be invited to come in person. If it wasn't online, you would all be here the same way that you would have been if we weren't streaming. And we also, because we knew that the development was happening in this area, in the Wedgeport, Little River, Mose Hill area, we decided it was a good idea to open this spot just in case, because this is where it's at. To bring you to Tuscany, it's a little annoying. No offense to Tuscany, but if you're in your community, so we wanted to make that an opportunity for you. The question 4 relates to your issue of the email, Alice and company. So I will not go through that. What the last question is, why is public information session happening after fishing has started? This is a fishing village, and members feel the meeting should have been taking place prior to the fishing season starting. Look, that's a legitimate comment. We know, all of our communities are fishing communities, and there's not much bigger than fishing for this community. So I just want to say that there is validity in that comment. There's, unfortunately for us, what happened was there's a process, and we're trying to respect the process as efficiently as possible. Government municipalities have been accused of slow and red tape a lot of times. And so what happened in our case is Elemental made an application in September of this year. And it takes time for us to assess that information and compile it and actually develop it to a point where we can make a presentation. We hoped to do that before the last Sunday of November, but we couldn't. So the next best thing was to say, well, I guess we have to go through this process, knowing that this is not the only one. So as I'm repeating myself here, the public hearing will be held in January. That's a much better time for our fishermen. And I respect the fact that this is really, really close to the first 2 weeks, and it's a really busy time for a lot of people. So the reason why it happened this way is that the information was prepared, and once the information was prepared, we started the ball rolling on the meetings. And so we also have to respect the time frame of the developer. The developer has a schedule, and so we're trying to respect that schedule as well. So it's a balance, right? It's a balance between the community need and the developer need, and ultimately that decision was made. I hope that you can be assured that this won't be the last time. Okay. I think that if we keep the channels open, as I suggested, it would ensure that the fishermen that are interested in commenting will have the opportunity to do so. That's the end of the questions that I have, and I know that Scott has one. And then, so what we're trying to do here, and I don't want to take this away from the chair, what we were trying to accomplish here is anybody who prepared in advance, we're going to deal with them first. And those who are here who wish to say something or comment are able to do so. And if you're not comfortable doing that, that's okay. You don't have to. You can submit your comments after in writing, or you can do it on a one-on-one, so it's less intimidating. The last thing we want to do is make this an intimidating situation. Maybe it's too late. Some people are really, really shy around public speaking, and we want to respect that. So we're gonna go to that question, and then we're gonna open it up to those who have not pre-prepared. And in those cases, if they want to speak, they have up to 3 minutes to say whatever they need to say. And that's to respect that everybody else may have something to say as well. Does that make sense? Are we good, Scott?
Yep, we're good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll just address the last question here. The last question that we actually, this is a question from just a resident. His name is Marcel Southern. Says he was used to live in Wedgeport, but now lives in South Ohio, and lives next to a windmill. And I'm using his words, finds the noise not horrible. He says just certain days you can hear it outside. His concern is not so much the windmill, more about the wildlife and the birds that could be impacted with the development. His question is to government is to not allow development to happen without a plan to how to deal or mitigate these issues with wildlife and birds. John, I'll ask Jonathan to add once I'll give an answer, and if Jonathan wants to add, feel free to add. So as it was shared in the presentation from WSP, part of the environmental assessment done by Elemental addressed this very concern. It's under the habitat, flora, and fauna section, where the province requires Elemental to provide an adaptive management plan that includes a decision-making process to mitigate the impact on these birds, such as the nesting osprey. He kind of indicates in his question here, specifically the nesting osprey that would be located in this area. So there's already an expectation and a requirement from Elemental on the environmental assessment to deal with this issue. So that's kind of quick and dirty. Jonathan, you may want to add a few more things if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Scott. I think just the sort of quick answer is that everything around both the potential risks to wildlife, the characterization of the effects to wildlife, the mitigations that we've committed to avoid or reduce those risks, and the approval conditions of what we need to do that is are required by the province of Nova Scotia is all detailed in our environmental assessment. And I recognize it's a large document and it's complicated. So I don't expect everyone can go there, but I think that there is quite a comprehensive list. Maybe just to sort of break it down for everyone who's in the room here, but we kind of follow as part of citing our projects, so planning around our projects and going through the different processes around permitting we need to go through. There's kind of some steps that we follow. So, right off the bat, before we even identify a project opportunity, or we got as part of our preparation of our proposal for our power purchase agreement, we do a risk assessment. So we look at things like, is the project sort of located on any sort of parks and protected areas? We know that we have the Tuscan Wilderness area, which is right adjacent to it. So that forces us to ask some more sort of questions. Is there any listed species at risk that have known to occur on the property? There's a good database that we can look at. So we have that stuff up front. We then go and do field studies. So broad field studies for generally flora and fauna. So sort of flora being habitat. What's the sort of vegetation and the habitats that are on the ground, and fauna being what uses those habitats. So we do those 1 to 2 years. For birds, we're required to collect information over a period of 2 years. Other things, it will be in season, such as rare plants. Lichens don't have any seasonal sort of restrictions. So we have it's usually 2 years where we do field studies. There's seasonal requirements where we have to go and look for things. We then take all that information, and that's compiled to be part of our environmental assessment that we submit, and that's the primary kind of regulatory document around effects to vegetation and wildlife. We then have kind of like a series of like approval conditions, and they're generally tied to construction of the project versus operations of the project. So as part of our prior to commencement, which is any vegetation clearing, we need to prepare a wildlife management plan that sort of covers all of those potential interactions around sort of like wildlife, and provides specific actions for what we're going to do to both do any pre-work, any pre-surveys, what we do to monitor the effects that we've sort of characterized, and then as Alain or Scott pointed to, what we do in the situation where we encounter something that we didn't think that we would encounter. And part of that, we have to report out on our observations every year to Nova Scotia government. That's kind of generally construction. And then operations, there's a unique condition because of where Wedgeport is located. And I think because of the wildlife areas that are around us and the number of migratory birds that pass through here, it's a well-known migratory bird route. We have a condition around all wind farms have a 2-year operational monitoring condition, but we have a special condition that goes farther, that if we encounter mortality events, we have to have an adaptive management plan in place that changes, whereby we would change our operations if we found that our operations are resulting in effect to migratory birds. And so, I think one of the key things that we do around our sort of information collection for birds is we take both, so we have people on the ground who do visual observations and record the number of birds, and that's obviously recorded time, date, weather condition, and sort of and whatnot. So those are active kind of like forms of like information collection. We also have passive forms of like information collection, whereby we have a radar. It's essentially a marine radar unit. It faces straight up in the air, and we're able to characterize. We have that running for we have 2 years of data, and so it is able to. It can't tell you which birds pass by, but it tells you the height of which flying objects are passing by the location. It also can bring birds into classes based on bird size. And so we know, and then we can also see number of birds just like a sort of, as you look at sort of radar, you see a lot of blips on the screen. You can tell there's multiple things that sort of coming towards you on a boat.
Just curious, how wide of a spectrum that be?
So it's a boat radar, so it's facing up in the sky.
Yeah,
so it's quite wide, probably almost 180 degrees.
Okay.
And then it's there's concentric sort of circles that would tell us the distance away, right? So that distance is accurate for the vertical axis. And so we can tell what are the kind of seem to be the important bird migration times, both in the spring and in the fall, and then what types of birds are sort of migrating at what size. So what sizes of birds. So in the future, if we have an event where there's mortality, we will, because we're doing mortality surveys, we will see those birds. We will be able to kind of reference them back to, okay, when did this happen? So what time of year? Is that representative of what we had previously seen? Yes or no? And then what the adaptive management sort of strategy, and we haven't written it yet, but what it will say is that if you have an event that's tied to a migration event, and there wasn't some sort of contributing or adverse factor, such as low visibility, which we can have because we're right on the ocean, then you need to change the way that you operate so that you don't have an interaction with those migratory birds. And so part of that is that because we'll know approximate timing of the migrations, and we see there's an event, a certain type of bird, we can then turn the turbines off for certain times of the year to avoid that interaction. So with respect to other operations across Canada that I'm familiar with, it's not very common for that to occur for birds, but we do, and we don't have a lot of bats in this area, mainly because on the East Coast, we've had what's called white nose syndrome, which has been a mass kind of natural. It's not natural, but it's a disease that spreads among the bat sort of populations. There's not a lot of bats around here, but in Alberta, where we operate, there are a lot of bats, and we have operational sort of mitigation plans whereby our turbines actually, because bats, same thing as migratory bats. So we know based on the pre-construction data we have, we know when they fly by the site, and so we also know that, bats are most active at low wind speeds. And so and we also know that bats are most active right at dusk and at dawn. And so we make a commitment that when we have certain wind conditions, so we'll say it's a cut-in speed of X number of meters per second. So if it's below, say, 7 meters per second, the wind, and it's at dawn or at dusk, and it's in a certain season, we actually make an upfront condition because we know from our pre-project surveys that we won't operate our turbines in those conditions because it's a known thing that bats interact negatively with sort of turbines. So that's just an example of the question around birds. And sorry, I probably took too much time to go through that answer, but kind of just how we manage that risk through the construction and operation. And there's lots of reporting we do, whether there is an interaction or not, because we're constantly collecting information, we're constantly reporting. So sorry for the long answer.
Perfect, John. Thanks for adding a whole lot to my question and my answer. That's it for the question, Chair. It's
So we'll continue for anybody that has a question. As Alain had mentioned, it's a maximum of 3 minutes for your question. And I'll give you the floor, whoever has a question.
Those here, if you have children and you don't want to go up, let us know. We don't have to work, but the mic face you up for you. You have a couple of people that Madam Chair, we have a question or a comment.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I kind of like to back up Alice in her comments about communications within the area of the windmills, the Wedgeport, Morse Hill, and Little River. I believe that the people in the remainder of Argyle are not too concerned, but the people that it's affected the most is this area here, to Alice's point, and therefore we should make an effort to make sure that the aging population, as she said it was, are notified either by mail out or whatever. I think we should make that effort. It doesn't have to be across the municipality, but I just want to back her up on that. Thank you.
Technology. Go ahead. Another question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So on completion, Elemental is going to have how many on-site workers?
Can I repeat the question? The question is, upon completion, how many full-time workers will be on site? Not during construction, after.
Correct.
That's the question.
Come up or speak from the air, or is that what? We have a range in our application of between 4 and 10. We see there's probably 4 people, like they will be full-time, kind of driving in and out of sort of work like every day. And I say 4, it's probably 4 full-time equivalents with some overlap in shifts. So we plan on having some sort of, because we don't have other projects around here, we'll have a dedicated operations and maintenance facility. It's probably gonna be off-site, but it's a spot where we can have our spare parts and our equipment that we need to undertake the regular servicing of the machines. There'll be times where we have to bring in additional people on site to help with some of these sort of specific tasks, or we may need to bring in other equipment such as the company to help with some of the specific tasks.
The reason for my question is because in the past with current ones that we have here, there's been noise issues with maintenance.
Yeah.
So we, as community members, oftentimes find it hard to get the phone number for someone to complain about the grinding gears. And with the number of turbines that are going to be erected, we just want to know direct contact. Because if you said that the office may be off-site for your housing or whatever parts and so forth, how is we as a community going to inform to make sure that we don't have to wait sometimes weeks on end to get somebody to come maintain?
Okay, so I think we will have a sign at the entrance of the property. So first of all the landowners we have agreements with, we make regular payments to them. We have a relationship with them. They have our contact information. So the landowners, the people who live closest to the machines,
Well, in all honesty, it's going to be living really close, but I've been living here 20 years, and I don't really know a lot of the landowners.
Okay. So but I think at the entrance to our site, we'll have a sign,
Okay.
and that will have a phone number. We also, as part of our environmental assessment approval conditions, we have to have a complete response plan. So that plan is posted, I believe it's posted on the federal website or the provincial website. I'm not sure actually if they post
Will is nodding at federal.
our submissions.
Our planner's nodding at federal.
Okay, well, it's not federal because it would be provincial, right? It's not a federal environmental assessment, it's a provincial.
Yeah, sorry if I could just interject there, Jonathan. Yes, that's correct. On the provincial website, so Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change, the environmental assessment approval is posted with that information. And if I also may, within the terms of the development agreement, would be a requirement for signage and for the particular information that I believe the question is with regard to. So contact information for maintenance and things of that nature.
And furthermore, we commit to a complaint response plan, and I'm actively drafting those plans right now. And I can tell you, the plan has a matrix around how we receive complaints and how we communicate those complaints and how we respond to them. So it will provide more information. We're happy that's a document that's for the public, and so we'll have to think about a way that's accessible to the public. Alice, I'll definitely share it with the Little River Community Group.
She's on it.
Oh, she is, okay. So so we will have a plan. We're required to have a plan, and it's for the public. So it's not good to just for us to keep it private because that's not the purpose of it.
The municipality can act as a facilitator in that if it's required. I mean, we're not directly responsible, but we work for the community. So we might, if assistance is required, we would be there as a backup for you.
Say there's a grinding noise. Can that turbine be shut off immediately or remotely?
Yeah.
They all have remote controls.
Yeah. So if there is a grinding noise, it can be shut off automatically or remotely, and it should be put into on writing that once the noise starts, that turbine should be shut off.
So in terms of the development agreement, what we could do there, we would generally insist upon maybe not how it gets done, but that it gets done.
Yeah.
So we're not in the position to say you have to do this, and that because it's developer's responsibility.
Okay.
But what we can say is you have to have a plan for this. Yeah. Say that you're gonna do it. You don't have to tell us how.
Yeah.
And so that would work between the two units, and they would agree on a proper action plan. Maybe the action plan is immediate shut off. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. But we would just say like broad strokes.
Yeah.
It would be something like that.
I totally agree with his comments. We had talked about it before. And basically the residents living in the area are more scared of grinding, bearing going bad than the actual washer blades. And they're saying that they break down and a few weeks later they break down again. So I agree with that comment you made. Something should be done quick.
Yeah.
In response.
I think all of those things would fall into our complaint response plan in terms of how that would get dealt with.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for.
For the difference of the height of the turbine and what we're used to seeing. And we set the boundary being the last time being 1 kilometer. What are the differences? Can you let the public know in writing what the differences might be with noise? With the noise and like flicker and so forth. Because there's got to be a difference to deny.
I have something to say, but I think that is a developer specific question. I'm going to repeat the question to make sure those hear it. There's a recognition that the turbines are going to be higher. So what is the obligation or how, and we do have regulations in place for noise and shadow flicker. How do they change based on the fact that the turbine is higher? Is that an appropriate repetition? Okay.
So I think that it's not just height that influences noise, like different types of turbines. We see that as we plan turbines, we see that some turbines that can be the exact same size are noisier than others. And that's a factor of, the aerodynamics of the blade, it's a factor of the generator. There's a bunch of things that sort of go into that. I think that with respect to turbines setbacks, 1,000 meters is larger than most municipalities have for turbine setbacks. Some sort of municipalities have setbacks that are a factor of height of the turbine. So in Cumberland, where we're developing one of our projects right now, it's 3 times the height of the turbine, which is the sort of the required setback. So for 200 meters, that would be 600 meters setback. In MD Argyle, we have 1,000 meter setback. With respect to noise, we do all of the modeling that we have done as part of our environmental assessment has been done through a turbine that is representative of the turbine that we're using for the project. And a condition of our environmental assessment is that once the turbine locations have been fixed, we have to update all of our sound modeling and all of our shadow flicker modeling to demonstrate compliance with the Nova Scotia rules that are in place, and also demonstrate that it's similar or sort of relative to the values that we had modeled through our environmental assessment. So we have a second check of all that information that has to happen as part of our environmental assessment compliance. And that's likely for this room in terms of the fixing of the locations, turbine foundation construction. It was anticipated to happen this summer. So I can see us fixing our turbine locations probably in the kind of early spring. And one of the activities we're doing right now is geotechnical investigations, which will inform the ground conditions, which informs the foundation design, which also there could be areas of unsuitable ground condition, which would cause us to potentially move the turbine a little bit. Does that answer your question?
As a holder of the contract, a couple things have changed since those turbines, the original turbines, went up. The rules, well, first of all, thanks to the Wedgeport community, the rules on distance were changed, because initially, if you remember, I believe it was 500 meters. And when we came and had a conversation within the community, they said that's too close still. And so we doubled it. That was a council decision. That was, I don't know, 6, maybe 7 years ago. The other thing that we added was this idea that a development agreement had to be signed. That's a bit more control than what I would call an as-of-right development. So what an as-of-right development is, it's basically, okay, here are the rules you have to follow. If you follow all those rules, go ahead. You're good. No public hearing, no public discussion. So what council said was that's not good enough for something like this, because there's too many, it's too complicated. There's too many complicated factors, right? There's noise, there's shadow flicker. So we have to do this differently. Plus, the application to get what they're getting is also complicated. So to get the province to say yes, and then to get environmental assessments to be done, that's on them, but that's a very complicated process as well. I will say that in our agreement, we're gonna insist that the environmental assessment recommendations be complied. One of them, the biggest one, I think, in my mind, if I'm living close to it, the first thing I'm concerned about is noise. So, and that might not be the case for you, but that's the case for me if it's me. So, what the proponent, and I looked this up and told nobody about it, but what I looked up is that this is very, very possible that the sound will be in or around the 40 decibel range. Now, I have no idea what 40 decibels is as a regular person in my house. But 40 decibels is like the sound of your refrigerator. So in your home, 40 decibels should be in or around.
Multiply that by 24, which is quite often happens. You get a full day of that noise, and then multiply it by several days, it gets wearing after a little bit.
So if it only emits 40 decibels, if you're saying, well, it's 12, not 24, but But if you multiply it by that, it's the 40 decibels still applies.
Yeah.
So it would
Just
still have to,
40 decibels multiplied by the number of hours at 40 decibels.
yes.
Over a period of days, it gets wearing on.
It's certainly at that, I think what we have read is that at that level of sound, that would be considered potentially annoying sound.
Yeah.
Annoying would be the word. And so I think that, I don't think that the municipality or even the developer would say that it's without sound. It does emit sound, it does. And so I think with the technology that's being in place with the newer ones, what we're seeing is that what we're reading is that the technology allows for that to be managed better than perhaps the technology of 10 or 12 years ago. It's kind of like solar power. You used to have an old solar panel and now a newer one does a bit better.
My philosophy is these windmills are great, but it's that noise level, which if you can control that, I have no problem.
Right. So I think, sorry, I'll just finish with, on our end, our development agreement lives on. So it could be that on a Monday, it was compliant. But then as time goes on, it still applies. So in a year from now, if that noise is getting worse, they are contractually forced to deal with it. And if they don't, then that's breaching the agreement that we have. And it's also, we're just, I say we're just a municipality, right? It breaches the provinces, and the province takes action far greater than the way that we take action. So it's not just a breach of our agreement, it's a breach of their agreement with environment. So you are absolutely legitimately right to raise that as an issue. And that's why we have to embed that in the agreement. It doesn't mean it won't happen. But what it forces them to do is to deal with it. That's the key. Because things break. They can make noise. Right? We all have that mower, right?
That's my initial worry. And I've experienced it with the little windmill we've got at the moment. Because I live literally just on top of, I can watch all two, the third one I can't see. But you get the noise from it. Certain winds, you get them all.
You do. And to this day, the turbines that exist in this region will, at times, depending on the situation, make noise that is more than another day. So the key is that we have to manage that with the proponent. We do that together. So they're committed to it because they're obligated, and we're just like the double check.
What I'm concerned is you're saying, right, blade technology. Surely you can start putting better blades in them to mitigate the sound.
That's more
aircraft background.
That's more for you. Yeah, I don't know enough about that technology.
So a couple things. One is we're not close to the 40 decimal. So that's a risk for us. If we're not in compliance with our environmental assessment certificate and we get shut down for a non-compliance event, not only that we stop generating revenue, but we actually have a requirement. We will sustain financial penalties for not delivering electricity we need to give to Nova Scotia Power. So for us, we have to, we plan to have a buffer so that we're not in a situation of non-compliance. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that around the project, which I think is a good news story, is that the predominant wind here, I believe, comes from the northwest. Is that correct?
Oh, southwest.
Okay, so is that coming across
Basically
from that direction? But generally, it's blowing from the west, it's blowing away from where people live. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's
the old week where it suddenly turns around and you know all about that. That's the.
So we know that wind comes from different directions.
It does.
But generally, in terms of because we do a lot of wind studies, and again, I'm just so everyone knows, I'm a biologist. Hence the expanded discussion around the flora, fauna, and birds. I'm not our engineer, but I also can speak generally about the project. But I know that as we plan these sort of wind farms, we know where the winds come from predominantly. So what I can say is that the predominant wind direction blows away from houses, which is also a sort of mitigation for noise. And I'll stay up here if there's any other questions.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of questions are going to you, and we certainly know that we have 2 locations, so we're trying not to dominate it, but we're still in the questions here, so if you have any other questions, go right ahead.
I do.
Okay, 1, 2, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm good.
I have a short question, as a member of the Wedgeport Windmill Community Benefit Fund and as open shareholder of the Watts unit that's on the field there now. What will the effects be on that unit, and will it continue to run?
Yeah, it continues to run. We are considering that's Watts Wind is one of the is a turbine that we also own. So it's in our interest to design the project so that there aren't any effects, sort of awake effects to that sort of turbine. I can't speak to any specific effects, but it's definitely been accounted for in our design.
Thank you. Go ahead, Madame.
In the summertime, there was a lot of talk about putting the lines across properties on Goose Lake. That's not on the table anymore, I hope.
So the transmission line is not part of the development agreement. Is that correct?
I think that is the case, because that's an agreement between you and Nova Scotia Power. It's outside of our jurisdiction to make a comment on that.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, what was the specific question?
To be honest, we live on Goose Lake.
Okay.
We're one of 3 houses that are on Goose Lake.
Okay.
Full time.
Yeah.
And we had heard rumors and people were talked to about renting our land to be able to put the transmission lines and stuff.
Yeah.
Which all 3 of us are pretty much no.
Yeah.
We're against it only because of the sound, humming of lines, that kind of thing. The fact that a lot of us hunt back there, you know, it's just a whole lot of stuff all together. Is there gonna be any talk of that in the future?
So we have a transmission line, sort of alignment that we've been working with private landowners, to connect the project to the Tuscan, sort of substation. It follows the Burnett line, and we have agreements with, almost all of the landowners along that line.
Okay,
So
I'm not sure what the Burnett line is.
So it's a separation. There's that sort of properties kind of, I mean, I don't know the history of the Burnett line, but it's a line. I can show you on a map if you want to look after the meeting, but,
that's great.
The Yarmouth County Argyle boundary.
the
Yarmouth County Argyle boundary.
Okay. But lands are still on the Yarmouth County, so it'd be mostly the.
If you're on the west side, you're on the Yarmouth County.
Transmission line follows the west side. Of the line.
And also, is there an online version of the map that was up there earlier, where exactly the turbines are gonna be?
Turbines are, so it's on our website. I don't believe, I think that the old layout that was in our environmental assessment is currently on the website, but I will make sure that gets updated.
you can flow that to us and we'll
Yeah.
make sure that.
You guys
the
already
community
have.
We do have a copy,
Yeah.
and so between us, we'll make sure that anyone who wants to see that can see.
And the Wedgeport, the sort of website, we have a holding page, wedgeportwind.ca, which is easy and it directs you to a Wedgeport website page.
I know you may have other questions, but the question of community benefit came up. And what community benefit means is that it has nothing to do with municipality, like it's not municipality led, okay? It's led by the developer, and they put money aside every year to contribute to the communities that are impacted by the development. So today, we have 3 turbines in the area, and those 3 turbines have a community contribution that goes to a group. And I forgive me, I don't know exactly who is on that group, but I do know that Alice is one of those. So, and I do know that every year they talk about where that money goes, and what the money is for nonprofit organizations. It doesn't benefit, residents directly, but indirectly. So maybe it goes to the fire department, maybe it goes to the club, etc. In this case, we've talked a lot about this with the residents. And I just want to say this about the development agreement. We're going to put something in the development agreement Enforceable or not is another question. But what we want to do is want to make sure that we respect both sets of communities equally. So we know that it impacts Wedgeport, and we know that it impacts Como's Hill and Little River. And I don't want to make it that we're combining Como's Hill and Little River as if they are not two communities, but they are two smaller communities, which is why I'm lumping them in that way. So, and what is likely to happen is that there would be a contribution annually that would find itself in the municipality of Argyle's hands. And there's a very charitable organization reason why that is, because not everybody can just take money and give money. And what would happen in that case is there would be likely be two committees, one from each of those groups of communities. They would be doled an amount, 50-50, whatever that ends up being, I can't say. And they would decide each year where that would go in their community. So it could be one organization or it could be 10, but each community group would have control over their proportion of that fund. That was very important to some of the volunteers that are here, because they know how difficult it is to generate money for their own community. So I just wanted to be very clear about that. We're going to try to set it in the development agreement, but really at the end of the day, like that's what it's going to kind of look like, and we just want to make sure that that's included in your consideration.
I do have one more comment about noise. I have Dan is feeding me some information from the environmental assessment, which I think is helpful to your sort of question. So out of all of the kind of closest houses where people live, we don't exceed 35 decibels in terms of like the maximum sound that we anticipate coming from the turbines. And also the way that it's modeled is it's modeled under worst case conditions. And so we understand that the turbines are the noisiest at 12 meters per second wind. I can't tell you what the conversion is to sort of kilometers, but generally our turbines will start turning at about 5 meters per second. And the model also considers that all receptors are downwind. So it looks at the wind coming from any direction, and it thinks about the house or the receptor being sort of downwind. So we call it a worst case scenario of sort of modeling the sort of generator at its loudest, and as if any receptor is being downwind. So those details are in our environmental assessment, but Dan Eaton, who's our sort of project engineer, is listening in and helping with some of the information.
And so 43 kilometers an hour.
Okay. And then
I live in a community of Plymouth, and we have a crusher that crushes stone near our home. And in the summertime, when the prevailing southwest wind is coming across, I'll get the decibel readings of about 75. Wow, in my backyard. So 40 is in that.
Yeah, and we're at 35.
35. 35 is in that. To put it into context. So,
before you can always come back, but before we go to Tuscan, because I know Tuscan has questions, are there any other questions at this time, or can we go to Tuscan right now? Okay, Tuscan, did you have some questions?
Any questions here? Yep, we have one here. Yep.
My question would be, why do we need to double the transmission line that running across the 103 to the Lake Vaughan generating station there? As it is right now, we have a transmission line there, but it's my understanding that Nova Scotia Power wants to double that transmission side, the size of it, to accommodate the power that would be coming from the wind farm. And as a property owner there, I'll generally have to, be giving up some of that property in order to put that transmission line there. Why can't you just, maybe you don't know, but why can't Nova Scotia Power just put in a bigger tower that's already, there, so that they can put two lines on rather than you know what I mean? You see in the city, those transmission towers are awful big. I'm sure they could put something in there that you know, so they wouldn't have to, instead of having 100 meters, they're looking at 200 meters.
Did you hear the question?
So I think that's probably a question for me. And so I think I can't speak on behalf of Nova Scotia Power with respect to their requirements. What I can say is that our transmission line coming from our project is 138 kilovolts versus the existing transmission line that runs from, I believe it's Yarmouth into, or around Yarmouth into the Tusket station, is 69 kilovolts. We chose to connect into that right of way because we felt like it was going to be less of an impact to having a parallel or an alternative route. So we chose that, and Nova Scotia Power, they will own and operate the transmission line for the life of the project. The transmission line gets constructed as part of our project, but it's not we don't own and we don't operate that transmission line. So we are directed by Nova Scotia Power around their user or their owner requirements. So we have to comply with. My understanding is that it won't be an additional 100 meter right away. I think that for the 138 kV, we're required to have a 30 meter right away. And because it's adjacent to an existing line, there can be an overlap of that sort of setback. So we're anticipating it to be an additional probably 20 meters from the existing sort of transmission line. And that transmission line is not part of the development agreement.
Correct. It's outside the municipal jurisdiction.
Did you want to answer further?
As far as the distance, we were told 100 meters. We were approached by an individual from representing you to request us to sign a piece of paper giving Nova Scotia Power the ease of for that transmission line of 100 meters.
So the 100 meters may have been an investigation area, which is typical, that we look at a larger area in case there's any constraints. I'm not aware of the specifics, but again, this is probably outside of our development agreement discussion.
Certainly not part of this discussion, but there may be another discussion to clarify the easement discussion between yourselves and the owner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions here? I don't see any more questions here in Tusket. Do you have any more in Wedgeport?
No, but I'm sure they'll think of one as soon as we stop. And the commitment to have an ongoing dialogue exists. So even if they don't have a question right now, it might crop up sometime in the future and will be available.
That's right. So if there's no more questions or that's it. So I guess we're at the final remarks by you, Alain.
Well, this is just more about what next. So what happens next is those that were here go home and think about it, or they think about it here and again. And what we'll do is we'll leave our contact information here to the municipality, because this really relates to the development agreement between the municipality and the developer. If the question relates to the developer, we'll make sure it goes to them. So I'll leave an email address here that you guys can take a picture on your phone and bring home. And so you can forward questions that way. We will be having a PAC meeting, which is a non-televised meeting. All our meetings are public. A non-televised meeting. You're welcome to attend that in person. It will be in Tusket on December 12th, which is next week, next Tuesday, I believe, at 6:30. And the PAC will be discussing ongoing what they heard here today and ongoing the draft development agreement. They will not see the draft development agreement. That will be another process. So what the PAC will say, okay, we have our concerns. We're going to recommend to council to continue. That's all that the PAC does. They just recommend. And then the council at a public streamed meeting in Tusket on the 14th of December will consider whether or not they will begin first reading to consider the development agreement at that time. Once that happens, all of the formal advertising that we talked about here and the advertising that was felt like could be better, that's when that really starts. So all of that will happen after, if they say, yes, we go to first reading on the 12th, that's when that advertising will happen. So on the first reading, it will be the first public presentation of the draft development agreement. You'll actually see it. So it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see it. And there may be elements of that development agreement that you have questions or that you have concerns about. That public hearing is precisely for that. If you have ongoing comments or questions, I repeat, I will leave my email, and that's what we're going to do. And so the public hearing meeting will happen in January of 2024. That's next year. And we'll get the dates out to you once they are confirmed. They are not confirmed as of today. So that's pretty much the purpose of the public participation. This is a pre-meeting meeting, right? This is a meeting to talk about something. The next one will be a meeting to look and consider something.
When do you think you'd have the funding ready?
Funding for the community? I think that the development agreement will address approximately how that would work. I think that the commitment to do that will happen regardless of what the development agreement says. So these things, I can't speak for the developer, but these things don't typically start until the operation of it starts, because presumably you require revenue to pay out your expenses. So they wouldn't start before 2025. So we'd have plenty of time to figure out how the community would best like to deal with this. The municipality is simply a conduit. We have no say in it whatsoever, but because of the way we're structured, it might be a really good place for people to do committees or subcommittees of council that are entirely community-based. So they would recommend, let's say there's $40,000 and you want to give it all to the Melbourne Hall. That decision is that community's decision. The municipal council does not require anything else. We would execute that decision. We would endorse it and execute. There is no override from the municipality in that area. The other thing that the municipality will be considering in the future is we know that there is a revenue associated with this development that will come directly to the municipality, and we need to talk about what that means for the municipality.
Could I make just one clarification on what you said there? The PAC meeting on December 12th is actually at 4:30, not 6:30.
Oh, I apologize. I got the date wrong. Sorry, I got the time wrong. I apologize. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Gee whiz, Alice, you would give me such a hard time. You'd be there at 6:30 when you're done. 4:30. Oh, thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Blaming it on Alice all the time. Hi, Alice. So I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you everyone for being here. Great questions, good comments, and it was a very productive meeting. So we thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.